For more inside analysis, we are joined by Paul Fritch, who is a senior fellow of Middle East Institute, Switzerland, and virtual executive in residence Geneva Center for Security Policy, live from Washington, D.C. Thank you so much for joining us. So, Mr. Fritch, the United States has now carried out a sixth consecutive night of strikes on Iran. So how do you assess the strategic objective behind this sustained military campaign?
Well, I think it's difficult to discern a strategic objective. I think this is more a sign of frustration with the collapse of the Islamabad Memorandum of Understanding that resulted from ambiguities in that document that were interpreted very differently by the two sides. But I think there's very little reason to believe that resumption of airstrikes by itself is going to achieve any sort of coherent political objective.
And Iran says it has retaliated by targeting U.S. military assets, including Al Udeid air base in Qatar. So how serious is the risk that the conflict could expand across the Gulf region?
Well, I think that's always a risk. I think the defensive systems that the U.S. and its allies have in place to protect these facilities are not perfect. There is always a risk that an Iranian missile or drone will get through and cause a large casualty event or cause significant material damage, either to a military facility or to a critical piece of energy infrastructure. But even if that's not the case, this conflict has depleted both offensive and defensive systems in U.S. stockpiles and in allied stockpiles to very severely low levels. And the longer this continues, the more that problem is going to be exacerbated.
And the Strait of Hormuz has become center stage of this confrontation once again. So with Washington insisting it is protecting freedom of navigation, while Tehran says it will defend its security interests. So how dangerous is the standoff for global energy markets, do you think, and international shipping?
I think, as we've seen in previous phases of this conflict, the closure of the Strait of Hormuz and the implications of that closure for global energy supplies are very severe. Even more severe would be the activation of Iranian-aligned Houthi forces in Yemen, who have the potential to similarly close the Bab el-Mandeb and access into and out of the Red Sea. So I think the stakes are very high for the global economy.
And with diplomatic efforts appearing to have collapsed on both sides, hardening their positions as well, is there still a realistic path, do you think, back to negotiations, or has the conflict entered a new phase, do you think, and of sustained military confrontation?
Yes. Well, the conflict has entered a new phase, which closely resembles the old phase, which we were in prior to the signature of the Islamabad Memorandum. I think there is a prospect that the two sides will return to some sort of diplomatic understanding because, in my view, neither side has the capacity to impose its will and achieve its objectives through solely military means. There's a certain asymmetry at play in the objectives and in the means being used to achieve them. The U.S. goal of reestablishing and then preserving freedom of navigation through the Strait of Hormuz is much more ambitious than the Iranian goal of maintaining the ability to close it at will. Because all the Iranian authorities have to do is plant seeds of doubt in the minds of captains of commercial vessels, shipping companies, and insurance companies. The U.S. task to restore confidence among all those stakeholders is much more difficult.
Thank you very much for your time to Asia One News.